So, good morning, everybody. My name is Louise. I will be the facilitator today. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person to person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people, and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen to each other, to learn from each other, and not to argue with each other. The land acknowledgement. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonkawan, Lipan Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc people in Boston, the Cayuga and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are on indigenous land and will always be on indigenous land. The format looks like everyone knows, but I'll say it just in case that we keep yourselves on mute unless you're speaking. If you want to get on the list, I'll be keeping a list. You raise one finger, wave it around a little bit, and I'll put you on the list. You have 2 minutes when it's your turn to speak. Don't interrupt the speaker. There is no side comments to others, no personal attacks, no name calling. The point of the discussion, as we said before, is to listen and to learn, not to argue. You can raise 2 fingers, which means a clarifying question. And the clarifying question is not to give your point of view, but it's to say, I just don't understand what you meant by a word or a term. It's not to argue with the speaker. So I will get everybody to introduce themselves, and then I'll get on to why I bought this article. So, Phyllis.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Phyllis in New Orleans, and I've been coming to Erace since the summer of 2008.
Marva.
Good morning. I've been coming to Erace post Katrina, and my name is Barbara, and live in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Thank you, Marva. Marion.
Good morning again, everybody. I'm Marion, excuse me, in New Orleans, and I've been attending the Erace discussion since June of 1993. Attended the very first meeting.
Thank you. Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been coming since August of last year.
Thank you. Nancy.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Moore, and I'm in the New Orleans area, and I've been coming since June of 2007.
Thank you. Cheryl.
Good morning. I think I said it. Babancha, been coming just before Katrina. Good morning, everyone.
Yay. Good morning. Glenn. Are you there, Glenn?
Yes, Glenn Abdullah from New Orleans. Been with Erace since 1994. Thank you.
Great. Beatrice. Beatrice. We will get back to Beatrice. I guess. Okay, well, the reason I bought this article is environmental racism is, an interesting subject to me, and I think we can get more conversation out of it, even though we've had previous discussions. So that's it, short and sweet. Who wants to be on the list? I'm starting the list, and I'm starting it with Marianne. Anyone else? No? Okay, jump on in. Feel free, y'all. Marianne, go ahead.
I'm glad you chose this, Louise, because I believe this situation that the man talked about. I wrote his name. What's the man's name? Here, Louis. No, Ronald Lamy. Was speaking about was speaking about and he's Ghanaian too. That came up. Spoke about rising sea levels and how the air is polluted, the waters are polluted, and this situation of how these industries have affected the certain areas in the state of Louisiana. My dad died of colon cancer when I was 12 years old, and the obstetrician caught me at stage 1 of ovarian cancer when I was 45 years old. So it brought back some terrible memories, and it made me angry all over again because, as I said, my father died when I was 12 years old from colon cancer, and he worked at a refinery called the American Sugar Refinery, which I think is still in operation. So we have a section in
Dr. Glenn.
Louisiana called the Cancer Alley. And a nice name that they give it is Louisiana's Chemical Corridor. And it includes the parishes of East Baton Rouge, West Baton Rouge. My daughter lives in East Baton Rouge, by the way. Arborville and Ascension parishes. We call our counties parishes, they say, because of some kind of religious influence, the Catholic influence, and St. James parishes. And it's in some information that I read is when I started looking up the information again, said that Reserve, Louisiana, which is a small community here in Louisiana, the cancer rate is 50 times the national average. So it's horrendous. It's horrible. And as I said, made me angry all over again, thinking about how my dad died.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Glenn.
Well, I don't think of environmental racism. I don't think that would be the proper term for it. It's wherever big business can do something and get away with it. And if you are politically weak, or you are like most African Americans, they don't really have watchdogs and to look out for them. That's where industry gonna put their pollution at. You have Love Canal. That was one of the big notice of environmental,
Yes.
and that wasn't black folks living in Love Canal. That was white folks, and uh, in many other places where white folks have been impacted by commercialism, industrialism. It had nothing to do with a person's skin color. It's where they can get away with it. Talk to you later.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl. So thank you, Glenn. It's Phyllis.
Well, Glenn pretty much described what environmental racism is, even if white people are sometimes impacted by it, it doesn't mean that most of the time who the businesses can get away with putting at risk are people of color, Black people, brown people, etc. Just because there's some exceptions to the rule doesn't make it not racist.
Right. Thank you.
Louise,
Cheryl.
Louise,
Sorry.
I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I'm so sorry. It's Beatrice. I'm on my phone in my daughter's car. So if you don't see me, I can't see myself. So anyway, I'd like
Well,
to talk at some
yeah,
point.
you weren't there for the introduction, but you're gonna. Can you hear us all right?
I can always hear you. I just I couldn't let you hear me. So I just
Okay.
I'd like to raise my hand.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Okay. So you put me on the list. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Sorry for the interruption. I can't
No,
figure out
of
how to
course.
make you see me.
I can't. We can only see the name, but that's fine. You can put it in chat next time if you want.
I can't even see
So
chat.
okay, don't worry. You can interrupt anytime, baby.
I'm sorry.
Cheryl, your turn.
Well, this article is very, like hits home. It's great to see an article by someone from another part of the world talking about this. I went back and checked, and it looked like this might have been done in 2020. When I looked at the date, I could be wrong. But we have an amazing a lot going on right here. Sharon Levine, I'm sure that probably rings a bell for we who live here or are interested in the area. And Dr. Joy Banner and her sister Joyce, they're this Descendants Project. Sharon Levine is Rise Up. One of the wonderful things that has happened is this used to be this thing that when I came to town and I moved back after around Katrina was that the Bucket Brigade was here and strong, and I used to donate to them, and they don't get my money anymore because Sharon Levine and Joy Banner do whenever I make a donation now. Sharon's gotten national accreditation. And Joy, I've been to Whitney Plantation and had people like from Time Magazine or the New York Times show up and talk about the issues. There's lots of work going on, but what we keep seeing here on this subject is there's white parishioners living in one place and they keep voting for white parishioners. And even though these people keep trying to protect their homeland, down in the river parishes, Wallace, they don't have the voting power, and then the white council rules them out, and it just keeps going on and on. And if you go to Whitney Plantation, there's a lot of documentation there. In truth, the 1960s, Dow Chemical saw that we were getting ready to have civil rights and Blacks were going to start having a larger vote and voice in this country. And they went down and bought a lot of the river parishes. And so I know that this is environmental, justice to clean this all up. And even though it happens to poor white people, it certainly happens a lot to Blacks. Richmond, Watts, lots of places in my life I've seen it. Thank you.
Cheryl, do you want to get back on the list? No? Okay. Glenn, I see your hand, but we have Beatrice first, then Teresa.
Okay.
And then Glenn.
Thanks for this TED Talk. I have always been concerned about the whole issue of global warming and how it is affecting greatly people who have the least to do with making it occur. The islands that are disappearing because of the water levels, Cancer Alley that Marion was talking about down in Baton Rouge. And a term that I've become familiar with is called sacrifice zones. And they talk about those areas near these places where there is pollution, that these zones are just, they're sacrificed. It is as if the people are disposable. So the country will just do what is necessary to build its energy supplies, and it doesn't matter how, who is affected. I liked also that the person speaking in the TED Talk talked about the Black Lives Matter movement actually he specifically said that, but every movement that has to do with bettering people's lives, dealing with racism, needs to also deal with environmental racism and talk about it in legal terms, that it needs to be against some very clear laws. That, for example, he talked about the child who died of asthma. The number of children, African-American children, who have respiratory diseases that result from where they live. I mean, this is absolutely wrong and needs to be handled, managed, and the powers that have the influence are the same ones who are benefiting from this pollution. So it's a difficult, almost sounds like intractable situation, but it's something that has to be worked on, and we don't have time to fool around. We don't have time to just let it be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Beatrice. Teresa.
Thank you. I put another link in the chat because it was almost like synchronicity that you chose this article, Louise, and then I'm at work, I'm part of the, oh, I forget the name, but it's basically environmental group, let's say. And they showed a 45-minute version of the documentary Kiss the Ground. And speaking of 2020, that's when this film was made. If you've never seen it, it is on Netflix. If you don't have Netflix, borrow your friend's password so you can watch Kiss the Ground. And it's the main way that it's talking about how to alleviate the effects of global warming is through bettering the soil. It's like soil is not dirt. There are living things. The film is so very well done. There's one part, however, when they mentioned the buffalo on North America, and in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, are they going to talk about why the buffalo were decimated? And sure enough, they did. And I was just very, very excited about them going into the reason the United States government chose to decimate all the buffalo was to, I forget which verb they used, but it wasn't, starve out people or genocide or anything like that. But basically, they wanted the indigenous population not to have a food source. And so when I made my comment, and you guys know I'm a talker, they only allowed 15 minutes to discuss. I was like, I could use that whole thing up. But I tried to stick to like our rules, about 2 minutes. And I pointed out how people who are more marginalized, or the government wants their land or something, they will make conditions to make it undesirable for us to be there. And I thought it was amazing. And I think it's called synchronicity that you chose this article at the same week that we're doing, or watching that film. And I brought that out about how people, depending upon their zip code, dictates how clean the air is and how drinkable the water they have access to. And so that group at work wants an article about that. And they said, oh yeah, that is definitely part of our mission. So I was like, oh, too bad we can't merge these groups. But anyway, I think my 2 minutes are up. Thank you.
It's just about.
Yay.
Perfect. Did you want to get back on, Teresa? No. Okay. We have Glenn and then Phyllis.
Yeah, to
I got
to
you,
look
Marion.
at the when you look at the oceans and all that's rising, they're not rising and flooding our Black neighborhoods. The Venice, the European city, they're being flooded out, and so many other places. Cancer Alley. Who is living in Cancer Alley? Just African Americans along the river? The river parishes is just African Americans? Mainly African Americans? We're not burning those logs to bring in Santa Claus. There'd be no white folks out there on those levees burning logs. That's their neighborhoods. When I was a truck driver, I went to this town to pick up some paper at a paper mill. I mean, 5 miles before I can get to the paper mill, the air was toxic, you know, and it was an all white. It was just an all white community that for Georgia, uh, centered around the plant of Georgia Pacific, and you find a lot of these places that have do petroleum turn into gasoline. These petrochemical. You'll find a lot. It's a lot of white people. So I'm not buying that is just against African American. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Phyllis.
Well, again, it doesn't make it not racist just because some white people are getting harmed. And I don't know how you drove through a community in a truck and determined that everybody who lived there was white. What I really wanted to say was in response to Teresa and talking about the American settlers here, decimating the buffalo population, because that was a huge source of like everything for the native indigenous people here. They didn't just kill them and eat them. They used every part that was usable so that they didn't waste it. And same thing is going on right now in Gaza and the West Bank. They are salting the earth. They're trying to destroy the aquifer under Gaza so that there won't be access to clean water. Can you put Cheryl on the list? They are trying to
Sorry.
they are trying to in the West Bank, they have been for years cutting down and setting fire to ancient olive trees that the Palestinian farmers use to create not just olives, but olive oil, soaps that are made with olive oil. And indigenous people don't destroy the land like that, only colonizers and settlers.
Mm-hmm.
So let's all keep that in mind if you want to. And I would have to say there's very little Israelis being hurt by that so far, but they will be because they live on the land too, and they claim they want to resettle Gaza with Israelis. But if it's not going to be livable for Palestinians, it won't be livable for them. And it continues to disgust me. Thank you.
I got a question.
Thank you. Clarifying question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Beatrice wants to be on the list.
Okay.
Phyllis,
Go ahead, Glenn.
Phyllis, can you tell when you're driving through a black neighborhood?
That's not a clarifying question. Thank you.
Sorry, but you can get back on. Do you want to get back on, Glenn? Glenn?
Not yet.
Okay. Marion.
Okay, after I looked at the video, I started delving into this, as I said, and I just told you all how it had personally affected me. I know all of us have heard about the Deepwater Horizon spill, and it affected the indigenous population in Grand Bayou. Deepwater Horizon, that was 2017. So we're not saying it just affected Black people. It all this type of pollution has also affected people that live in the states that are called sacrifice zones, that Beatrice just mentioned a few minutes ago, in the states of Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee. It's also noted that there's a lot of heavy industry concentrated in both Chicago on the south and west sides. So just to reiterate again, the indigenous population has been affected greatly. And anybody that lived in the states of Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee that lived in these sacrifice zones were also affected. And of course, that just didn't include Black people. So we're not saying that pollution only affects Black people. I just mentioned our indigenous citizens and anybody that lived in those 5 states. White, Black, Hispanic, whatever. But 56% of the pollution, 56% of Black people are affected by these methods that cause severe, serious cancers and death. 56%.
Thank you, Marion. I have Cheryl and Beatrice on the list. So Cheryl.
So quickly, just for clarity, fortunately, 2 computers here. One of them doesn't work real well with the voice. But here we go from Data USA about the river parishes in Louisiana. The 5 largest ethnic groups in the river parishes are white, non-Hispanic, 49, Black, 41, white, Hispanic, 2%. So, it's pretty close to 50-50, but I really do believe from the involvement I've had with Joy Banner and Sharon Levine, it's very clear that these companies are going into the places where Black neighborhoods are. These are country areas, and some of them aren't that widely populated. It's a workforce. They bring in upper people to work in these companies from other places, so they really don't live in the area and give us the money that we need as far as being part of a community.
Gotcha.
And they leave the dirtier work and definitely the filth. We ourselves are in a sacrifice zone because there's been research done where it's shown that they do releases that come to this part of town. So I don't know if any of you have ever noticed, on a cloudy day, you can smell the releases that they do from those factories. So I know I live in a sacrifice zone. I pay really cheap for my gas, and my friends that live in other places pay a lot more. And that's like my payoff for breathing stuff. The largest, last time I checked, it still was the same. The largest uterine cancer in the United States is from here. That's because us Southern ladies love to take baths in that filthy water. So, there we go. We're part of the sacrifice zone ourselves.
Okay.
Thank you.
What
Thanks,
did you
Cheryl.
change, Marsha?
Wait, I have a clarifying
Oh, okay.
question from Teresa to Cheryl.
Hey, Cheryl, for those of us who don't know the breakdown of parishes, are more than one zip code represented in a parish?
Sorry.
Are they? So they are equivalent of counties? They just use the word parish?
That's
or-
right. That's what we use down here. And
Okay, just
they're all the ones that touch along between here pretty much in Baton Rouge. Like that's what they're talking about, is the river parishes. And that's where these chemical companies are, so the boats can get to them and they can go to railways and things like that to produce 60% of the country's petroleum.
okay, thank you. And I would like to get on the list.
Okay, I got you. And Beatrice, you're up.
Okay. Historically, I know I've said before, but what a tragedy it is that the colonialists, rather than learning from the indigenous people, decide to destroy and remove them and starve them. These were people who had cared for the land for thousands of years. And as Phyllis said, and Teresa was talking about the show, the buffalo was essential for everything. If you've ever seen pictures of a person sitting, one of the colonialists or people sitting on top of a big pile of buffalo bones, it's just, then they're just killing the buffalo for no reason other than perhaps one reason, whereas the indigenous people use the entire animal for everything, for clothing and all of that. And so I'm encouraged that in Maine, I don't know where else it's happening, indigenous tribes the land is being what they call rematriated, not repatriated. They're giving back land so that these people who are being called, these indigenous people, are being called conservators because they know how to take care of their land. They know that everything that they do is going to affect the entire environment. If it's the water, if it's the trees, the Europeans that came here were so greedy and selfish. Everything was to be used for their benefit, not thinking of like the tribe 7 generations down. How is my decision going to affect 7 generations from now? And so we have a lot of catching up to do. If only we could listen to that ear that must have been somewhere in our heads, that these people know how to care for the land and not destroy it. And if we had just learned, and it's never too late. And I'm going to have to leave because I'm sitting in my car. My daughter's at a luncheon and she had to be in at 11, and I don't have to be until 11:15. So blessings to you all. Bye-bye. Love you.
Bye, Beatrice. Love you too.
Thank you.
Teresa, and then the list is open. Is there anyone who would like to be on the list after Teresa?
Ooh, that means I'm gonna talk for 5 minutes. No, I'm kidding. The reason I was asking about the zip codes is I'm gonna make the blanket statement, zip codes are proxy for race. So even though pollution will affect people across, because pollutants don't know our ethnicity, it's a pseudoscientific thing anyway, so it's not like some person is genetically stronger based on the amount of melanin in their skin. But I do know, at least in politics, they can just about be surgically precise in how they implement racist policies because they can target zip codes. So, saying that, well, this is here and these white people live here and blah, 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 blah. It is so easy to see where people are concentrated in which zip code and then build some newfangled pollutant near the zip codes that would have the least, just like Circuit of the Americas, which is a racetrack. I lived in Austin for 14 years, and that racetrack did not exist before I moved there, and now it's there. And I'm not into race car driving or really sports in general. I guess you do call that a sport. And I had never been to COTA, which is what Circuit of the Americas is called. And I said, where did they put it? Because I didn't even notice, for all the big deal. And one of my friends said, of course they built it where all the poor people are. They would have the least amount of protest. And, you always talk about how, it's going to bring so much money in. And I thought, well, are the people around where COTA exists going to get that money in their pockets so they can move away from that noise and air pollution that they're going to be subjected to? I've never followed up on it, but my hunch is no. But it was just very interesting how my friend responded. It's like, of course they built it where the poor people live. So I think as long as zip codes are a proxy for race, whether you call it a parish or a county or whatever, it really depends upon your zip code. I know when I lived in Austin, I lived in the east part of Austin, I always saw the police. If you live east of I-35, and I learned later that was the training ground for the police. And it's just like, how is it possible to think that Black people commit more crimes when you're policing where we live more often? If you did the same things to white communities, if it was even tolerated, you'd find those white criminals, but that doesn't happen. So I'll get off. I'm sure I blew over 2 minutes. Anybody else want to get on?
It's good. Yeah. Anyone else? Or I'll just mention actually, because you reminded me of, I think it's called Police Town in Atlanta, isn't it? Outside of Atlanta?
Cop City?
If I'm wrong. Huh? Cop City, yeah. They're building a big training ground. And again, that is environmental racism right there as well, because it's right on a greenbelt area of surrounded by Black community. So, yeah, I mean, it does exist. It does exist, Glenn, and it's predominantly Black and Native peoples. Thank you, Phyllis. You are on.
So I just want to say that, unfortunately, most of the places that are going to be affected the worst are not even in the Northern Hemisphere, at least initially. The first places to be affected by like the crisis that our climate is going through. The islands, the coasts of countries that are mostly brown or completely Black are the places that are going to have to deal with the rising sea levels, and that does include southern Louisiana. But this is a world issue, not just a United States issue. I think places are already having flooding that they've never experienced before, to the level that they're having them. And when Katrina happened, there was talk of not just abandoning it. There was just talk of moving everybody out. But there's so many citizens here that weren't hearing that it didn't happen. But I also think that if another big one happens, they might get their wish. And it wouldn't surprise me if they made it more flood safe and moved in more white people.
Right.
That is probably what the plan would be. So yeah, this isn't just our country, it's affecting the world, and unfortunately we are as a country contributing more to it than the global South people who are going to get affected first. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome. So yeah, gentrification of a huge scale, right? I hear you. Anyone else like to be on the list? It's open. Teresa, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I'm getting on. Let me unmute myself. My goodness. I was thinking about that old movie, Hunt for the Red October. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie or remember. There's this one scene where the bad guys in the submarines, I'm just going to call it a torpedo. I don't know what weapon it was, but the way the good guys in the submarines maneuvered their submarines, it made that the enemy submarine basically fired upon itself. And it's like, we just killed ourselves. And it's like, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had kind of a Hunt for the Red October situation where the people who are doing the most. So last time I checked, it was the United States had a 5-planet consumption rate. And I had to explain to my nephew what that meant, because you just breaking it down. It's like, what do you mean 5-planet? And I said, well, there is such a thing that before there was modern inventions and whatever, modernization, whatever we call it, we were living in harmony with nature. Things were naturally cycled, like the water cycle and the carbon cycle. I said, what we're doing now would take 5 years instead of whatever, or excuse me, 5-planet consumption. That's what I meant to say. The resources that we are using would take 5 planets to maintain. That's why we're out of balance. And so I was explaining to him things like the carbon cycle and the water cycle and how things are renewed. We are using a 5-planet consumption. I said, if every country did that, we'd kill this planet even faster. So what I was thinking, or what I, just now is like, too bad there's no scene from like Hunt to the Red October where it's instantly done. The people with the most money and influence, although Elon Musk is really doing a sensational job of shooting himself in the foot, which I shed no tear for him. But, instead of seeing how they could fund ways that we can get back into harmony with nature, because I think that's got to be the next step in modernization, is how to do the most with the least environmental impact. But they want to go to Mars. You know, they want to go out of space. Like, they've already given up on this planet. And I just think, if there are Martians, and I know I've said it before, I hope they don't teach the Earthlings how to grow corn, because they'll never get rid of us.
All right, we've got Marion.
Okay, am I still mute?
No, you're fine. You got it. No, now you muted again.
Shoot, okay. All right, a few minutes ago, I gave that percentage about the percentage of the African American community being affected, 56%. So I want to say something else about our indigenous brothers and sisters. It says here in my notes that indigenous communities are disproportionately impacted by pipelines, mines, waste incinerators, and other polluting industries that poison the air and the water. But yet these tribal lands still remain. It notes that the Navajo Nation reservation is approximately the size of West Virginia. So, to be fair, and to make sure that all of our fellow brothers and sisters are talked about in this conversation, I just mentioned the pipelines and the mines and the waste incinerators. The indigenous communities are also seriously and unfairly targeted by these industries that have a complete disregard. And I had also noticed, speaking about sacrifice zones, what did I say here? It's 250,000 Americans, and that just doesn't include Black people that are affected by these pollutant practices.
Got you, Cheryl. Thank you, Marion. Cheryl.
Again, just looking up numbers, the New York Times reported in March of 2020 that 75% more Black people live near toxic waste facilities. Blacks are 68% of Black people live within 30 miles of a coal-fired plant. That was reported through Green America. And then 40% are more likely to live somewhere where extreme temperatures are due to climate change. And that's the Washington Post. So it's out there, it's fact, just for anybody who'd like to know.
Thank you. So look, I'm going to add something while I'm waiting for someone to want to be on
I
the
want to
list.
ask a question.
You want what?
Ask a question.
A clarifying question, or
Right.
Okay, go.
Just want to know the 40% she gave that African American around coal plants. Well, who are the other 60%?
Glenn, it says that it's 68%, and they're going to be people of different backgrounds, I'm sure. I didn't read the whole article. I went to where the source was.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Okay. So again, waiting for someone to go on the list, I want to mention, I think it was Teresa that was talking about how the earth, the soil is so important. And it's just to go off at a little bit of a tangent. Roy was telling me this wonderful thing of how you can test the soil by putting has to be a cotton, it doesn't have to be underwear, but a piece of cotton basically in the soil. and within a few weeks, it should all, when you dig it back up, it should be all be gone, because it gets eaten and attacked by the bacteria and microbes in the soil, which is a way to show that your soil is either healthy or not healthy. Anyway, I thought that was quite an interesting little tidbit. Anyone else would like to be on Cheryl? Go, Cheryl. You're muted.
Oops, sorry, this is for Glenn. A little bit more for clarification on that. Although African Americans make up 13% of the United States population, I think this is from 2021. A startling 68% live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant, compared to 56% of whites. So that makes it a startling number of Blacks that live near, because of them only being 13% of the population, and that 13% of that live, near those plants. So it's quite a higher number.
Okay, you can put me on the list. I got something to talk
Yep.
about.
Go ahead, Glenn. You're on. The list is open. Go ahead.
Now, we bring up statistics, but we don't really know why that so many African Americans lives around this particular coal plant or whatnot. Maybe the land was cheap for them to be able to buy them a house. Maybe that's why they themselves moved there. There are other reasons why Black people are populated around certain places. Yeah, it's not just because, oh, the Black people is there, let's build a coal plant there. No, there'd be other reasons that you would have to consider, and that is not mentioned in your statistics.
Okay, that's it. Okay, Phyllis.
So again, the land was cheap so that poorer people would buy it, and a lot of those poor people are Black and brown people. So it's all connected. There's a system of oppression that goes to take out the most vulnerable people and to put them in the most jeopardy. I don't know why it's hard to comprehend. Thanks.
Okay. Phyllis, check your phone. And I think if there's no one else that wants to get on the list, we can start the wrap up and we'll be finishing early. So is there anyone else who wants one last word before the wrap up? Marion, go ahead.
In my notes, I also have written that people are coming from other countries, Taiwan in particular, and as recently as 2019, even though we're in the year of 2023, that's only 4 years ago, they were granted a permit to build $1 billion plant to produce plastic products in St. James Parish, which is heavily populated by minority people. There are also indigenous people who have lived in the area for 6,000 years that are being affected again. Not to want to say that only Black people are affected. So Taiwan, 2019, 4 years ago, came here and built a big old plant to produce plastic products in St. James Parish. And it is considered a sacrifice zone.
Right. Thank you.
Question.
Yep. Clarifying question.
Right. How many in St. James Parish, how many of the population is white? What percent is white?
It doesn't mention anything about how many people are white. It just said the this Taiwanese industrial company was an industrial giant, and it doesn't mention anything about race.
I'm
It just
guessing it was
says,
about poverty. Sorry, maybe, poorer.
but St. James Parish is in that area that's called the Cancer Alley. So I don't know how many people are white.
Gotcha.
And
Get,
it's
put me on, put
terrible
me
if
on the
white
list.
people are
Put me
affected,
on the list.
indigenous people, or Black people. It's not fair. But these
I
are
can
not rich
answer the
people.
question.
I say put me on the list. You
Okay,
can't
Phyllis.
come in now.
Yep.
You can't come in
No,
now.
Phyllis already. Glenn, Phyllis put her hand up for be on the list. Would you want to be on the list as well?
Well, no, I was gonna tell him it's 51%.
Okay,
It's
white.
so you're done.
51.2% white,
Tell you what,
47.2% Black or African American, American Indian, and Native alone 0.3.
okay. Anything else to add, Phyllis?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Glenn, did you want to be on the list? I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Cheryl.
I say a few words. Like I say,
Okay, so
we
Glenn and then Cheryl.
see we bring up these arguments. We present the truth, but then we leaving the truth out at the same time. See, we ain't mentioning that it's more white people live in St. James Parish than there are African Americans. And so, but we want to give the audience the view that it's majority African Americans. That's giving out misinformation and misdirecting the listeners. That's it.
Okay. Cheryl. And then Phyllis.
I think that I feel kind of frustrated because it feels like we should have maps of where these neighborhoods are and who lives by them, because it does seem to be that it's not getting through to certain people on our panel that, a parish can have a nice white neighborhood and then it can have a shitty Black neighborhood, and why do Black people have to pick houses in along places where that's cheaper anyways? Like that. I'm sorry, there's just so much that doesn't resolve for me in the arguments that are happening. It's where the placement of the homes are. You can go to California and you can look around the Bay Area and you can see that Richmond is primarily Black, and that's where they're producing all the oil, in the Bay Area. It's just, that's where those people have but it's where the concentration of those populations are in proximity to these places.
Thank you. Okay, Phyllis. Or did I miss Glenn? Glenn, you already spoke, right?
He did. And Nancy has her
Yes.
hand up.
Yes, I got Nancy. I got Phyllis and then Nancy.
Okay. So yeah, I just want to reiterate that just because the population is slightly more white people doesn't mean the white people live in the places that are most at risk from the pollutants. And yeah, we don't have a map right now with the zip codes and all the information we need, but I don't know why it's so, well, I'll just say it is completely unnecessary to try to always refute an argument when you yourself don't have all the facts. So thanks.
Thank you, Phyllis. Nancy.
I just wanted to say kind of pretty much as the two previous speakers said that, that the parish could be predominantly white, but the area that is affected by the pollutants is predominantly Black. I mean, it seems like anytime that there is anything that's going to adversely affect a population, it seems to be built in a Black neighborhood or affect something Black. I know they have something they're fighting near Whitney Plantation that they want to build. Is it a chemical plant that they want to build out there? And and it's going to directly affect Whitney Plantation. Now, I don't think that that's just by accident, or it just happens to be a coincidence. Why is it that anytime, I mean, how many Black neighborhoods were wiped out by the interstates? I mean, I grew up in an area, well, I mean, if you lived anywhere near Claiborne Avenue,
Right.
it was affected by Interstate 10. 280, which was is a major artery in New Jersey that goes from, you know, from a majority rich white area and takes you straight into downtown North. So you can bypass all, you know, the Black neighborhoods. Well, it actually wiped out Black neighborhoods. That's what it did, where Black people lived in New Jersey. And I don't think that was by an accident either. They wanted to, and also those Black businesses that serviced those neighborhoods were destroyed as well. So it serves many purposes when they decide to build chemical plants or put interstates in and so forth. What's that?
Thank
I
you.
know I was taking a nap, but I wasn't.
You're taking it in subconsciously, right? So we will do our wrap up now, and the only person that hasn't spoken is Marva. So you get 2 minutes if you would like 2 minutes, Marva.
No, I don't need 2 minutes. First of all, I don't possess in discussion because I have a speech impediment and would take me longer if I spoke. And I have to keep repeating it myself. I, I can't say about this discussion. I learned a lot and good discussion, good article, good video, and was an educational experience experience of me.
Thank you. You know, we'll always give you extra time. You don't have to feel rushed. And when I say 2 minutes, it can be whatever minutes you want, you know?
Thank you.
Okay. So everyone else has 1 minute to wrap up, and first on my list is Phyllis.
Well, I'll just say that my initial feelings after October 7th and the ongoing ethnic cleansing and genocide of Gazans and people on the West Bank that started, it was actually like I was like, how long will it take climate change to do its thing on us? Because we don't even deserve to live when we're allowing this, when we have people for the first time in history broadcasting to the world their genocide in real time. And the governments that used to be the colonial powers are denying that reality. It would be nice if only the colonizers can get wiped off the planet and everybody else could take it and make it better. But I don't think that's how it works. So thank you.
Thank you. Marion, you got 1 minute if you want.
I certainly appreciated this topic being brought forth, and you all have heard my mantra before about all of us being human beings, and I don't know what is it going to take for certain people to understand that a human being is a human being, and that our differences in skin color should not be top priority, because you all know I believe our creator liked diversity because he diversified the plants and the animals. So why wouldn't he add a little color in some of his human creations? So I certainly appreciate this topic, and my final words will be the pollution of the planet Earth does affect all of us, but in certain instances, it affects certain people in our diversified human population more than others. So thank you, Louise, for bringing this forward. And unfortunately, capitalistic greed, who it hasn't invented itself, but these greedy people that seem to think that not if you have a gazillion dollars, a gazillion dollars isn't enough. So you're going to kill off or make
Right.
your other people sick, your other human people sick.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, Louise.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome, Marion. Nancy.
Oh, it was a good topic. I just went and said what I had to say, but that was an interesting topic. Also, there's another in New Orleans. Where's the place that they built the plaza where they built that housing development on top of a toxic garbage dump or something? And another
Dumping?
one, yeah, another one is oh, I don't know if this is actually true or not too, but over in the Holly Grove area where they were trying to get people to sell their land cheap or their housing, and by telling them that it was built on a toxic dump or something like that. I mean, people will come up with a lot of different excuses to drive people out or use their land or exterminate them, however they choose to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Glenn.
Well, all I gotta say is they wanted to build a garbage dump in New Orleans East, but they stopped them from building that garbage dump in there. And we really need some place to dump our garbage.
That's it.
That's it.
All right, brother. Teresa.
There's plenty of space under the golf courses to dump garbage. That'll be my last word. Give it to the main people who cause it.
Yay. Absolutely. Cheryl.
Thank you for a discussion that now I gotta do something really nice, like go look at flowers and trees again. One thing I think is always interesting when we come through times like this, like when we bombed Iran and now all this bombing that's going on, like, those bombs, they affect the climate. Really disgusting. I rack my mind to try to understand how we got to be such, how humans got to be so greedy. I guess it's really just who we are. It seems like the people that are of Muslim descent, that whole group of people, ever since the Moors got chased out of Spain, the Pope made the decree, and it's just been bad ever since then. I don't know. I wonder if it ever was nice. Have a good week. Happy holidays. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, well, I appreciate everyone's input. I've only got a couple more things to say as I was listening to everybody. The environmental racism also covers where they build, fast food places, right? Like next to projects, there's always like a myriad of fast food places. So good nutrition, doesn't exist because they can buy cheap crap food, and so it's inwardly environmentally bad for you. So there's all kinds, and it's a no-brainer. It is a real thing. It does exist. And of course, yeah, just to reiterate what Phyllis said about Palestine, and I don't know, I'm speechless about it, and I'm very sad about it, and free Palestine. All right, guys, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.